The night of my husband's funeral, his lawyer handed me a letter from him. Watch what they choose. That's who they are. I need you to see it too. I didn't understand. Not until 3 days later, when all 4 of us sat in that lawyer's office, when Henry's will was read, when I realized what my husband had planned. He'd set a test in his will, one that would force my children to show me exactly who they'd become, what they valued, what they'd sacrifice for. I watched my son calculate dollars while his father was still warm in the ground. I watched my daughter plan how to profit. And I watched my grandson, the one they all dismissed, make a choice that tore our family apart. Henry wanted me to see the truth, and I did. I just wasn't prepared for how much it would cost us. My name is Claire, and this is my story. Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, and subscribe to Never Too Old channel. We're creating a community of people who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now, back to the story. The funeral home smelled like carnations and carpet cleaner. I sat in the front row, hands folded on my black dress, watching people I barely recognized anymore file past Henry's casket. 2 weeks since the heart attack. 2 weeks since I found him in his workshop, slumped over his workbench like he'd just decided to take a nap. My son Derek arrived 20 minutes late, 45 years old, wearing a suit that looked like it came from somewhere with valet parking. His wife trailed behind him, checking her phone. They hugged me with the kind of practiced sympathy you see at weddings when distant relatives greet each other. Derek smelled like expensive cologne. His hands were soft. "Mom, I'm so sorry," he said. Traffic was terrible. It was a Tuesday at 2 in the afternoon. There was no traffic. My daughter Laura came next. 42, blonde highlights fresh from the salon, heels clicking on the funeral home carpet. She bent down and kissed my cheek, leaving a lipstick mark I didn't bother wiping away. "How are you holding up?" she asked. I told her I was fine. She nodded like she'd already moved on to the next thing. The service started at 3. The pastor read from a script he'd probably used 100 times before, filling in Henry's name where the blanks were. Derek's phone buzzed twice during the eulogy. He silenced it but kept glancing at his pocket. Ryan showed up halfway through, 19 years old, wearing his warehouse uniform because he'd come straight from work. There was a grease stain on his right sleeve and sawdust in his hair. He took 2 buses to get here. I knew because I'd offered to pay for a cab and he'd said no, he could manage. Derek leaned over and muttered something to Laura. I couldn't hear it, but I saw Laura's expression. A quick flash of annoyance. Derek shook his head slightly. Ryan didn't notice. He was looking at the casket, his jaw tight, his hands clenched at his sides. He'd been crying. His eyes were red, and his face was blotchy in that way that happens when you've been trying to hold it together and failing. The thing about Ryan is this. 8 years ago, his parents died. My oldest son Andrew and his wife Sarah, killed in a car accident during a winter storm. They were coming home from her company Christmas party. Black ice. The semi-truck driver said he never saw them. Ryan was 11. No siblings. Sarah's parents were in their 80s and couldn't take him. Henry and I didn't hesitate. We brought him home that same week. He lived with us from 11 to 18, in the second bedroom of our Beaumont, Wilshire house, ate breakfast at our table every morning. Henry had a philosophy about raising kids. Earn what you spend. Build from nothing. He'd started as a laborer, worked his way up to owning a small civil engineering firm, retired at 65 with enough money to be comfortable but not flashy. When Ryan turned 18, he told Henry he wanted to move out, do it on his own. Henry didn't argue. Ryan moved out 3 months later, got a studio apartment in a rough part of town, started working 50-hour weeks at a warehouse. He's taking night classes at the community college now, studying engineering like his grandfather did. He rides the bus everywhere. Doesn't own a car. Derek thinks this is stupid. He said so at Easter, standing in my kitchen with a beer in his hand. You know Grandpa would help you, right? You don't have to live like this. Ryan had looked at him with this calm, patient expression. Grandpa built everything himself. I want to do the same. Derek laughed. You're going to work yourself to death to prove a point nobody cares about. Ryan didn't respond. He just went back to washing dishes. Now, at the funeral, Ryan walked up to the casket. He didn't cry. He just stood there, one hand resting on Henry's chest, his head bowed. 5 minutes, maybe longer, People started shifting in their seats, uncomfortable with the silence, but Ryan didn't move. Finally, he stepped back. He didn't look at anyone, just walked to the back row and sat down. After the service, people gathered in the lobby. There was coffee in paper cups and cookies on plastic trays. Derek and Laura stood near the coffee station, talking in low voices. I was close enough to hear. "Do you think the old house is in the will?" Derek asked. Laura glanced around, making sure no one was listening. "The one on Flanders Street? In Laurelhurst?" "Yeah. That neighborhood's exploded. It's worth at least $800,000 now." "Are you serious?" Laura's voice went up. "We could split it. Sell it." "That's what I'm thinking." They were talking about the house where they grew up. 4 bedrooms, big backyard with an oak tree that Andrew climbed when he was 6 and Derek fell out of when he was 8 and broke his arm. Henry and I lived there for 30 years. We moved out 24 years ago when Laura went to college. Too much space for just the 2 of us. Henry kept the house, rented it out, made some extra income, but it was still the place where my children learned to walk, and learned to ride bikes, and learned how to slam doors during arguments. Derek and Laura haven't been inside that house in 10 years, maybe longer, but now they were calculating its value down to the dollar. I turned away before they saw me listening. The post-funeral gathering was at my house. The smaller house, the one in Beaumont, Wiltshire that Henry and I bought after we downsized. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a workshop in the garage where Henry spent most of his time. Derek and Laura stayed for 20 minutes. Laura's daughter wanted to get home before dark. Derek had a conference call at 6. They hugged me again, promised to check in soon, and left. Ryan stayed. He didn't ask if I needed help. He just started cleaning, took the casserole dishes people had brought and washed them in the sink, folded the chairs, threw away the paper plates. Same thing he'd done every Sunday when Henry was alive. Show up, help out, don't make a big deal about it. I was putting leftovers in the fridge when the lawyer arrived. Philip Carson, 60-something, gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He'd been Henry's lawyer for 30 years, handled the business sale when Henry retired, drew up the will, made sure everything was in order. He stood in the doorway with an envelope in his hand. "Claire, I'm sorry to intrude," he said. "Henry asked me to give you this tonight. He said to read it alone." I took the envelope. It was thick, sealed, with my name written on the front in Henry's handwriting. "Thank you, Philip." He nodded and left. Ryan finished the dishes and came into the living room, drying his hands on a towel. "I should go. I've got an early shift tomorrow." "You need a ride?" "Bus is fine." "Ryan." He looked at me, really looked. There was something in his face that reminded me so much of Andrew it hurt. "Thank you for staying," I said. "Of course." He set the towel on the counter. "I'll come by this weekend, help with anything you need." After he left, I sat at the kitchen table with the envelope in front of me. The house was too quiet. I could hear the refrigerator humming, the clock ticking, a car passing outside. I opened the envelope. Henry's handwriting, careful, precise, the same handwriting I'd seen on birthday cards and grocery lists and notes left on the counter for 50 years. "Claire, I'm sorry to do this to you. I know it's not fair, asking you to watch what I've set up, but I need to know if I'm wrong about them. I need to see who they really are. I've arranged an auction. The estate will be divided that way. Philip has all the details. When it happens, I need you to watch. Watch what they choose. That's who they've become. I'm not angry at them. I'm just sad, and I need you to see it too. I need you to understand why I did this. I love you. Henry." I read it 3 times. Then I folded it and put it back in the envelope. The workshop was cold. I hadn't been out there since Henry died. It still smelled like sawdust and motor oil. His tools were hanging on the pegboard, organized exactly the way he liked them. His chair was pushed back from the workbench, like he'd just stood up and walked away. I sat down in that chair. I looked at the empty space where he used to sit every Sunday morning with his coffee, writing in his journal. An auction. A test. Henry had planned something to show me who my children had become. And I was afraid of what it would reveal. 3 days later, Philip called and asked us to come to his office. All 4 of us. He didn't say why, just that it was important and we needed to be there by 10 in the morning. I drove downtown, found parking 2 blocks away, and walked. The building was one of those older high-rises with marble floors and brass elevator doors. Philip's office was on the 10th floor, windows overlooking the city. I could see the river from where I sat. Gray water, cloudy sky, rain coming later. Derek arrived first. He shook Philip's hand, settled into a chair like he owned the place. Laura came next, carrying a leather purse with gold hardware. She kissed my cheek and sat down, crossing her legs, checking her phone. Ryan was late. He came in at 10 after, breathing hard like he'd been running. His hair was damp from the rain that had just started. He mumbled an apology and sat in the chair farthest from everyone else. "Had to miss my shift for this," he said quietly. Derek glanced at him but didn't say anything. Philip sat behind his desk, a stack of papers in front of him. He looked tired, older than I remembered. "Thank you all for coming," he said. "I know this is difficult. I'll try to be as clear as possible." He opened the folder and pulled out the first document. Henry's estate has been appraised. The total value is approximately $1.7 million. Laura sat up straighter. Derek leaned forward. "The estate will be distributed through an auction." Silence. "An auction," Derek said. "Yes. Each heir will receive $100,000 in bidding credits. You'll use those credits to bid on lots from the estate. Whatever you win, you keep. Credits can only be used within the auction. They have no cash value outside of it." "This is insane," Laura said. "Why would Dad do this?" Philip didn't answer. He just kept reading. "The auction will take place this Saturday at 10 in the morning. Location to be determined. All heirs must be present. If you choose not to attend, you forfeit your credits and any claim to the estate." "This is legal?" Derek asked. "Yes, completely. Can we contest it?" "You can try." But Henry was of sound mind when he drafted this will. It was witnessed, notarized, filed with the court. It's ironclad. Derek sat back in his chair. I could see him thinking, calculating. Philip pulled out another sheet of paper. "There are 5 lots. Let me walk you through them." He read slowly, like he wanted to make sure we heard every word. Lot 1. The house on Flanders Street in Laurelhurst. Appraised value $850,000. Minimum bid $90,000. Derek nodded. I saw him glance at Laura. Lot 2. The vintage car collection. 3 vehicles. Appraised value $320,000. Minimum bid $90,000. Laura uncrossed her legs, leaned forward. Lot 3. Workshop tools and equipment. Appraised value $15,000. Minimum bid $5,000. Ryan's head came up. He was listening now. Lot 4. Stock portfolio. Diversified holdings. Current market value $150,000. Liquid assets. You could sell these shares as early as Monday morning if you wanted to. Minimum bid $85,000. Derek looked at Ryan. I saw it. A quick glance, assessing. And Lot 5. Philip paused. Henry's personal effects collection. He read the contents slowly. 1 leather-bound journal spanning 40 years of entries, 12 family photo albums, a Purple Heart medal from his service in Vietnam, a pocket watch that belonged to his father, letters between Henry and Claire during the war, Henry's wedding ring, various memorabilia. Ryan was staring at Philip now, not blinking. Appraised value, Philip said, $0. Sentimental value only. Minimum bid $85,000. Wait, Derek said. $85,000? For photos and a journal? Those are the terms of the will. That's ridiculous. Nobody's going to pay $85,000 for that. Philip looked at him. Then it won't be bid on. So what happens to it? Philip's voice went flat. If Lot 5 receives no bids, the contents will be destroyed. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Destroyed? I said. Yes. Not donated. Not archived. Destroyed. Those were Henry's explicit instructions. That's insane, Laura said. Why would he want that? He said if no one valued them enough to bid on them, strangers shouldn't have them either. The room went quiet. Ryan was looking down at his hands. Philip cleared his throat. There's one more rule. In the event of identical bids, priority goes to the eldest heir by birth order. Derek smiled. Just a little. That's me. Laura shot him a look. Any questions? Philip asked. Yeah, Derek said. Can we use our own money to bid? Add to the credits? No, credits only. 100,000 per air. Nothing more. And if we don't use all our credits, unused credits are forfeited to charity. Derek sat back. Okay, Saturday, 10 in the morning. Where? I'll send you the address tomorrow. We stood to leave. Laura grabbed her purse. Derek checked his phone. Ryan stayed in his seat, staring at the paper Philip had given him with the lot descriptions. In the parking lot, I hung back. Derek and Laura stood by Derek's car, talking in low voices. I was close enough to hear if I didn't move. I'm taking the house, Derek said. It's the most valuable thing on the list. Fine, Laura said. I want the cars. They're easier to sell. What about the stocks? Ryan's the only one who could bid on them. Laura shrugged. Let him have them. 150,000 will finally get him out of that terrible apartment. He'd be stupid not to take them. Ryan's naive, but he's not stupid. He'll take the stocks. They got in Derek's car and drove off. I walked to my car slowly. Rain was coming down harder now, cold and steady. I got in and sat there, wipers going, waiting. Ryan came out a few minutes later. He didn't have an umbrella, just walked through the rain like he didn't notice it. I rolled down the window. Ryan, you need a ride? He looked up, surprised. Yeah, thanks. He got in the passenger seat, dripping wet, smelling like rain and whatever soap he used at the warehouse. We sat there for a minute, engine running, heat blasting. Your grandfather wrote in that journal every Sunday for 40 years, I said. Ryan didn't look at me. He was staring out the windshield, watching the rain. I know, he said. I used to watch him, every Sunday morning in the workshop. He'd sit there with his coffee and write. I asked him once what he was writing about. He said someday I'd understand, when I was ready. Did you ever ask again? No. We drove in silence. I took him to the bus stop near his apartment. He got out, thanked me, started to walk away. Ryan, he turned back. Saturday, I said. You'll be there? Yeah, I'll be there. He walked off into the rain. I watched him until he disappeared around the corner. 4 days until Saturday. Saturday came faster than I expected. The auction was in a rented space downtown, some kind of event hall with concrete floors and exposed pipes on the ceiling, folding chairs in rows. A podium up front with a microphone. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Henry's belongings were on display, tables along the walls with numbered signs. The house was represented by a framed photo of the Flanders Street property and a stack of documents. The cars were in another photo, all three lined up in what used to be Henry's garage. The tools were shown in photographs, still in his workshop. A laminated inventory list sat next to the photos. I stood there looking at it all. 40 years of a life reduced to 5 lots with price tags. Philip was setting up paperwork at a table near the podium. The auctioneer was a man in his 50s wearing a suit and a bored expression. He'd probably done 100 of these. Derek and Laura arrived together. They'd coordinated, apparently. Both dressed like they were going to a business meeting. Derek nodded at me. Laura kissed my cheek. Neither of them looked at the tools or the photos. They were focused on the paperwork Philip was handing out. Ryan came in last, still in his warehouse clothes, like he'd come straight from a shift. Maybe he had. He stood in the back, hands in his pockets, looking at the photos of the workshop tools. We took our seats. The auctioneer stepped up to the microphone and tapped it twice. The sound echoed. We have 5 lots. Let's begin. He picked up a clipboard. Lot 1. The property on Flanders Street in Laurelhurst, Portland. 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, approximately 2,000 square feet. Currently rented. Appraised value $850,000. Minimum bid $90,000. Derek's paddle went up immediately. 100,000. The auctioneer barely paused. I have 100,000 from Derek Morrow. Laura's paddle shot up. 100,000. I have 100,000 from Laura Morrow. The auctioneer looked between them. 2 identical bids. Per the will, eldest heir takes priority. He pointed at Derek. Lot 1 goes to Derek Morrow for $100,000. Derek sat back, satisfied. Laura's face went tight. She'd known it would happen this way, but she was still angry about it. Lot 2, the auctioneer said. vintage automobile collection, 3 vehicles, a 1967 Mustang, a 1972 Corvette, and a 1958 Thunderbird, all in restored condition. Appraised value $320,000. Minimum bid $90,000. Laura didn't wait. $100,000. The auctioneer looked around. Any other bids? Nothing. Derek was done. Ryan didn't move. Sold to Laura Morrow for $100,000. Laura crossed her arms. She'd gotten what she came for. I watched them. Both of them had spent everything they had on things they could sell. The house Derek would flip within 6 months. The cars Laura would list with a dealer before the week was out. Neither of them had looked at those things and thought about Henry. They'd looked at them and seen dollar signs. Lot 3, the auctioneer said. Workshop tools and equipment. Complete woodworking setup. Table saw, drill press, hand tools, workbench. Appraised value $15,000. Minimum bid $5,000. Ryan raised his paddle. $5,000. The auctioneer waited. Any other bids? Silence. Sold to Ryan Morrow for $5,000. Derek leaned over to Laura and said something I couldn't hear. She smirked. Ryan didn't react. He just lowered his paddle and stared at his hands. The room felt different now. Derek and Laura were out of credits. Ryan was the only one left who could bid. The auctioneer knew it. Philip knew it. Everyone knew it. Lot 4, the auctioneer said. He read slower this time, like he wanted to make sure we all heard. Stock portfolio, diversified holdings across multiple sectors, current market value, $150,000. These are liquid assets. Shares can be sold as early as Monday morning. He paused. Minimum bid $85,000. Every head in the room turned toward Ryan. He was staring at the podium, not moving. Derek stood up. Ryan, listen, you spend $85,000 in credits. You get stocks worth $150. Sell them Monday. Real cash. That's what matters. Laura leaned forward. Ryan, this is liquid. Real money. You can use this. Ryan looked at me. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. Your grandfather built that portfolio over 30 years, I finally said. Quiet. Just for him. Ryan kept staring at the paper Philip had given him. The lot descriptions. I could see his eyes moving, reading something over and over. What's Lot 5? He asked. The auctioneer blinked. Excuse me? Lot 5. What's the minimum bid? Philip answered from his table. $85,000. The room went dead silent. Derek's face changed. Ryan, no, don't even think about it. The journal? Laura said. The journal costs the same as the stocks? The stocks are worth $150,000. Derek's voice was getting louder. The journal is worth $0. Ryan looked at the auctioneer. Pass. For a second, nobody moved. Pass? The auctioneer said. I'm not bidding on Lot 4. Ryan. Laura stood up. What are you doing? You just gave up $150,000. Derek was pacing now, hands in his hair. Are you out of your mind? The auctioneer cleared his throat. No bids received for Lot 4. Per the will, this lot will be liquidated and proceeds donated to charity. Ryan, that's more money than you'll see in years, Laura said. Ryan didn't answer. He was looking down at his lap, jaw set. I wanted to say something, to tell him it was okay, to tell him I understood, but I didn't understand. Not yet. Derek dropped back into his chair. He looked at Laura. He's going to bid on the journal. He can't be that stupid, Laura said. He just passed on $150,000. The auctioneer was watching all of this with that same bored expression. He'd probably seen families fall apart over money 100 times. He picked up his clipboard again. Lot 5, he said. The room went quiet. The auctioneer walked to a small table behind the podium. He picked up a wooden box, old and worn, and carried it back. Set it down carefully in front of the microphone. Lot 5, he said again. Henry Morrow's personal effects collection. He opened the box, started pulling items out one at a time, holding each one up. One leather-bound journal, 40 years of handwritten entries. He set it on the podium. 12 family photo albums. He held up one of them, pages visible through the plastic cover. A Purple Heart medal from service in Vietnam. The metal caught the fluorescent light. A pocket watch belonging to Henry's father. He clicked it open, showed the room. Letters between Henry and Claire Morrow written during the war. He fanned them out. Envelopes yellowed with age. Henry's wedding ring. He held it up. Gold band, simple. And various personal memorabilia. He put everything back in the box. Appraised value, he said. $0. Sentimental value only. He paused. Looked directly at Ryan. Minimum bid, $85,000. Derek exploded. He was on his feet, voice loud enough to echo off the concrete walls. Ryan, this is the stupidest decision of your entire life. Laura stood too. Those are pictures, old paper. You just passed on money. Ryan didn't flinch. He was staring at the wooden box. The stocks are just money, he said. Exactly. Derek's face was red. Money you need. You're living paycheck to paycheck in a terrible apartment. Money I can work for. Laura's voice went higher. You can't work for $150,000. That would take you years. Ryan looked at her. His face was calm. Almost too calm. But I can't work for Grandpa's memories. I was watching his hands. They were shaking. Just slightly. But his jaw was set, and his eyes hadn't moved from that box. The auctioneer cleared his throat. Do I have a bid? Derek came closer. Not yelling now. Pleading. Ryan, stop. Think about your future. Think about what you're giving up. You could get your own place. A car. You could stop working nights. You could... Ryan raised his paddle. $85,000. Derek froze. For a second he just stood there. Then he dropped back into his chair like his legs had given out. Laura turned to me. Mom, say something. He's ruining his life. I looked at Ryan. He was still staring at the box. Not at Derek. Not at Laura. Not at me. It's his choice, I said quietly. His stupid choice, Derek muttered. The auctioneer looked around the room. Silence. Derek and Laura had no credits left. They couldn't bid even if they wanted to. Derek leaned forward. Ryan, listen to me. You can withdraw the bid. Right now. Let it go to charity. You'll still have your credits. Philip spoke up from his table. Credits are non-refundable once a bid is placed. Then bid on nothing, Derek said. Walk away with nothing. That's better than this. The auctioneer spoke over him. Going once. Laura's voice cracked. Ryan, please. You're choosing paper over your life. Ryan looked at the box, then at me, then back at the box. No, he said. I'm choosing Grandpa. The gavel came down. The sound cracked through the room. Sold to Ryan Morrow for $85,000. Ryan stood, walked to the front. The auctioneer handed him the wooden box. Ryan took it carefully, like it might break. It was lighter than I expected from watching him hold it. He tucked it under one arm. Derek was still sitting, staring at nothing. Laura had her face in her hands. Ryan walked past them toward the door. $85,000, Derek said without looking up. For a box that weighs 5 pounds. Ryan stopped. I know. Then you're an idiot. Ryan turned around, looked at Derek. Really looked at him. Maybe I am, he said. But at least I'll know who my grandfather was. Can you say the same? Derek's head came up. I lived with him for 18 years. And I lived with him for 7. Ryan's voice was steady, quiet. But I listened. Nobody said anything. The truth of it hung there in the air between them. I stood up. My chair scraped against the concrete. The auction's over, I said. Derek. Laura. You should go. Laura looked at me. Mom. We need to talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. I kept my voice level. Firm. You got what you wanted. The house. The cars. Now go. You can't possibly think what Ryan did was smart, Derek said. I think he made the only choice that mattered to him. That's insane. Maybe. I picked up my purse. But it's done. Laura grabbed her things. Derek was still sitting there, shaking his head. Finally he stood. They walked out together, voices low, muttering about lawyers and contesting and how this wasn't fair. The door closed behind them. Philip was packing up his papers at the front table. The auctioneer was on his phone. The room felt bigger now, emptier. Ryan stood by the chairs, holding the box against his chest. Everyone thinks I'm crazy, he said. I know. Are they right? I walked over to him, put my hand on his arm. Come to the house tonight, I said. Open it in Grandpa's workshop. That's where he wrote it. That's where it should be read. Ryan nodded. He looked exhausted, like he'd been holding something heavy for too long and finally set it down. Okay. You did what you thought was right. Did I? I didn't answer. I didn't know yet. He left first, walked out into the gray afternoon, the wooden box under his arm. I watched him through the window. He didn't have a car. He'd have to take the bus home carrying that box, carrying $85,000 worth of memories. Philip came over. That was something. Yeah. Henry would've, he trailed off, shook his head. I don't know what he would have thought. I did. I thought I did. Henry had planned this. He'd known someone might bid on that journal. He'd known it might cost them everything. He'd wanted to see who would do it. And now I knew. I drove home alone. The house was quiet when I got there. Too quiet. I walked through the living room, the kitchen. Everything in its place. Everything the same as it had been this morning. Except it wasn't. Ryan had just given up a fortune for a box of paper and memories. Derek and Laura had walked away furious. My family had fractured over an auction Henry had designed to show me the truth. And I still didn't understand what the truth was supposed to be. But tonight, in the workshop, when Ryan opened that journal, I thought maybe I would. Ryan arrived after dark. I heard his footsteps on the driveway. Then the knock on the door. He was still carrying the wooden box. Come in. He followed me through the kitchen, out the back door, across the small concrete patio to the garage. I flipped the lights on. Fluorescent bulbs flickered, then held. The workshop smelled like sawdust and motor oil. Henry's smell. Ryan stood in the doorway for a moment, just looking. The workbench where Henry had spent thousands of hours. The pegboard with empty spaces where his tools used to hang. The chair pushed back like he'd just stood up. Set it there, I said, pointing to the workbench. Ryan put the box down carefully, opened the lid, started taking things out one by one. The photo albums first, 12 of them, different colors, different years. He opened one. Baby pictures. Ryan as an infant, red-faced and tiny. Andrew holding him, grinning at the camera. I've never seen these, Ryan said quietly. Your dad was so proud. I came closer, looked over his shoulder. He called us from the hospital at 2 a.m, woke us up, didn't care. He just kept saying, I have a son. I have a son. Ryan set the album down, picked up the Purple Heart. The purple ribbon was faded. The gold edges of the medal were tarnished. Vietnam, I said. He never talked about it much. Got shot in the shoulder. Spent 3 months in a hospital in Saigon. The pocket watch was next, brass, heavy, with an engraving on the back. Ryan turned it over, read it out loud. To William Morrow, for 30 years of service, 1952. Henry's father, I said, worked for the railroad his whole life. Died when Henry was 25. Left him that watch and not much else. Ryan clicked it open. The inside was etched with tiny numbers and gears. Still ticking. He set it down, picked up the journal. The leather was worn smooth from decades of handling. The spine was cracked, pages yellowed at the edges. Ryan opened it to the first page. Henry's handwriting, neat, careful, slanting slightly to the right. Ryan read out loud. March 3rd. Andrew turned 8 today. Taught him to use the table saw. He was scared at first, kept his hands too far from the blade, but he listened, asked questions, did exactly what I told him. That's all you can ask, that they listen. I remembered that day. Andrew had come inside covered in sawdust, eyes bright, talking a mile a minute about the birdhouse he'd made. Ryan flipped through pages. Entries about Andrew's high school graduation, about Derek starting a business selling used electronics out of his garage. It failed within a year. I didn't know about that, Ryan said. Your uncle doesn't like to talk about his failures. There was an entry about Laura's divorce, about how she'd shown up at the house with 2 suitcases and a black eye and hadn't said a word for 3 days. Ryan kept flipping, found entries about himself. Here, he said. This one's dated the day I was born. He read it to himself first. His eyes moved across the page. Then he read it out loud, voice shaking slightly. Andrew called this morning, 2:15. He has a son. Ryan Andrew Morrow. 8 pounds, 6 ounces, healthy. Andrew sounded tired but happy. Said Ryan has his eyes. I told him that's a good name. Strong. I hope I'm around long enough to teach him what I taught Andrew. Ryan stopped reading, set the journal down, stared at it. He wanted to teach you, I said. And he did, for 7 years. Ryan wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, picked up the journal again, kept reading. He found the entry from the night Andrew and Sarah died. I knew which one it was from the way his face changed. Do you want me to read this one? I asked. No, I need to. He read it silently. His jaw tightened. When he finished, he closed the journal, set it on the workbench, didn't say anything. What did it say? I asked. That Andrew was only 40, that it was too young, that you were taking me in and he didn't know how to be a father again at 68, but he'd try. Ryan's voice was flat. He said he wished it was him instead of Andrew. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. Ryan opened the journal again, flipped forward, found another entry. This one's about the cabin trip, when I was 12. He read it aloud. Took Ryan to the Oregon cabin this week. Just the two of us, fished every morning, caught nothing but it didn't matter. He asked about Andrew. I told him everything I could remember, every story, every mistake, every good thing. He listened like every word mattered. That's Andrew's son, no question. Ryan looked at me. I still remember that trip, best week of my life. We sat there for a while, reading through entries. Henry's thoughts on retirement, on getting older, on watching Derek and Laura grow into people he didn't quite recognize anymore. Then Ryan found the last entry, dated 2 weeks before Henry died. He read it out loud. If you're reading this, you chose memory over money. You spent $85,000 on paper and photos and old metal. The others think you're insane. Maybe you are. But I think you just proved you're the person I hoped someone would become. Tomorrow morning, go see Philip Carson. He has an envelope for whoever reads this. Ask him for it, and know that you earned what's inside. Not because you're blood, because you listened, because you valued what matters. That's all I ever wanted. Ryan set the journal down. What envelope? I don't know. Should I call Philip now? It's almost 9 at night. Call him tomorrow. We sat in the workshop for another hour. I told stories about the things Henry had written about. Ryan asked questions. We looked at photos, old ones of Andrew as a kid, ones of Derek and Laura before they got so focused on money, pictures of Henry and me when we were young, before any of this. Finally, Ryan packed everything back into the box. Thank you, he said, for letting me open it here. This is where it belonged. He left around 10. I watched him walk down the driveway, the box under his arm again. Then I went inside and went to bed. The next morning, Sunday, Ryan called. Philip said, he can meet me at his office in an hour. Can you come? Yes. I drove downtown, met Ryan outside the building. We rode the elevator up to the 10th floor together. Philip was waiting in his office, door open. Come in, he said. We sat. Philip pulled a large envelope from his desk drawer, sealed, Henry's handwriting on the front. For whoever wins Lot 5. He handed it to Ryan. Ryan opened it, pulled out a stack of papers, legal documents, a property deed. What is this? Ryan asked. Philip folded his hands. The Oregon property, 40 acres in Clackamas County. Lot 5 included not just the personal effects, but also full title to that property. Henry deliberately didn't mention it during the auction. He wanted to see who would bid on the journal, without knowing what else came with it. Ryan stared at the deed. How much is this worth? Last appraisal was $2.8 million. Ryan went pale, set the papers down on Philip's desk, looked at me, then back at Philip. I own land worth $2.8 million? Yes. There was another piece of paper in the envelope, a letter. Ryan unfolded it, read it silently first, then out loud. Ryan, or Derek, or Laura, whoever you are, I couldn't just give you this property. If I had, the others would have fought you, claimed it was favoritism, dragged you through court. So I made you earn it, not the property, the knowledge of it. You proved you valued me over money. You chose memories when you could have chosen stocks. You gave up everything you had for a journal you'd never read. Now no one can say you don't deserve what you've gotten. The auction wasn't about dividing my estate. It was about revealing character. You revealed yours. I'm proud of you, Grandpa Henry. Ryan folded the letter, set it down. Do Derek and Laura know? He asked. Not yet, Philip said, but the deed transfer is public record. It'll be filed with the county by end of business Monday. They'll find out. They're going to lose it. Yes. Underfarm. That afternoon, they did. I was in my kitchen making tea when I heard tires in the driveway, car doors slamming, then pounding on my front door. I opened it. Derek and Laura were standing there, both red-faced, furious. You hide a $3 million asset from the estate. Derek shoved past me into the house. Laura followed. How long have you known? Known what? The property. The Oregon property. It was in Lot 5 and nobody said anything. Ryan was sitting on my couch. He'd been there since we got back from Philip's office. He stood up when they came in. I found out this morning, he said. Liar. Derek got in his face. Nobody spends $85,000 on a journal without knowing there's a payoff. I didn't know. Then you're even stupider than I thought. It was in the will, I said. It was part of Lot 5. Your father didn't disclose what came with it, but it was there. Laura turned on me. And you knew? I found out when Ryan did. This auction was a scam. Derek's voice was loud enough to echo. He rigged it so Ryan would get the big payout. I stood in front of him, looked him in the eye. It was a test, I said. Your father gave you what you valued. Derek, you valued property you could flip for profit. Laura, you valued assets you could sell. Ryan valued his grandfather's memories. The property was a reward for choosing love over money. So Ryan gets $3 million and we get nothing? Laura said. You got what you wanted. The house, the cars, things you can sell. You both walked away with exactly what you chose. The only difference is Ryan got more than he expected, and that's eating you alive. We're contesting this, Laura said. On what grounds? I said. The will was legal. The auction was fair. Ryan didn't know about the property. You have no case. Derek pointed at Ryan. This isn't over. Yes, it is, I said. Your father saw what you'd become. People who measure love in dollars. He gave you one last chance to prove him wrong. You chose money. Ryan chose memories. That's the difference. Derek and Laura left, slammed the door. Tires screeched backing out of the driveway. Ryan and I stood in the quiet house. That was bad, he said. Yes, they're never going to forgive me. No, probably not. He sat back down on the couch, put his head in his hands. I sat next to him, didn't say anything, just sat there. Outside, the sun was setting. The house was getting dark. 2 weeks passed. The house stayed quiet. Too quiet. I made dinner for one. Ate at the table alone. The phone didn't ring. Derek and Laura didn't call. I heard things through Philip. Derek had listed the Laurelhurst house the Monday after the confrontation. Put it on the market. Philip said he'd gotten an offer already, pending the tenant's lease ending. Derek would make a profit. A good one. I didn't know what he planned to do with the money. And I didn't ask. Laura sold 2 of the cars, kept the Mustang. Philip said she'd gotten top dollar for the Corvette and the Thunderbird. She was doing fine. Ryan was still working at the warehouse, 50-hour weeks, taking the bus, living in that same studio apartment. Developers had been calling him, Philip said. Offers coming in. 2.9 million, 3 million, 3.2. Ryan hadn't answered any of them. I drove to the warehouse on a Tuesday, found him on his lunch break, sitting on a concrete loading dock with a sandwich. Can we talk? I asked. Yeah. We sat in my car, heat running, rain starting to fall. I brought you something, I said. I handed him the journal. You left it at my house. I know. I wanted to keep it there, in the workshop. Why? Because that's where it belongs. He opened it, flipped to a page near the middle, showed it to me. Look at this one. Your 50th anniversary. I read Henry's handwriting, careful, precise. The entry was short. 50 years with Claire today. Took her to dinner at the same place we went on our first date. She ordered the same thing, salmon. I got the steak. We didn't talk much. Didn't need to. 50 years and I still don't understand how I got so lucky. She's the only thing I ever did right on the first try. I couldn't speak, just stared at the words. I thought you should see that, Ryan said quietly. I wiped my eyes, handed the journal back to him. Thank you. We sat there for a while, watching the rain on the windshield. I'm keeping the property, Ryan said, not selling it. The developers are offering a lot of money. I know, but it's mine. Grandpa wanted me to have it. I'm not going to flip it for cash. Derek and Laura will think you're insane. Ryan smiled a little. They already do. Have you heard from them? No. You? Not yet. Ryan looked down. I'm sorry. I know they're your kids. You didn't do this. They did. Your grandfather tried to show them something and they didn't want to see it. That's not your fault. He nodded, finished his sandwich, crumpled the wrapper. I need to get back to work. Okay. He got out of the car, turned back. I'll come by Sunday, help with anything you need. You don't have to. I know. He walked back to the warehouse, disappeared through the metal doors. That Sunday, he showed up like he said he would. We went to the workshop. He was moving the tools little by little, fitting them into his studio apartment somehow, making room. He was pulling boxes off a shelf when something fell. A small wooden box, handmade, beautiful. Henry's work. What's this? Ryan asked. He opened it. Inside were letters, old ones, envelopes, yellowed and brittle. Ryan picked one up, read the return address. These are from my dad. To Grandpa. He opened one, read it, closed his eyes for a second, then put it back in the box carefully. Letters from his father, from before Ryan was born. He didn't need to read them out loud. I could see what they meant on his face. Do you think Grandpa knew I'd choose the journal? Ryan asked finally. I thought about it. About Henry's letter. About the auction. About everything he'd set up. I think he hoped, I said. There's a difference. Ryan packed the letters into the box, set it with the other things he was taking. I don't regret it, he said, choosing the journal, even if there'd been no property, even if it really was just photos and paper, I still would have done it. I know, I said. That's why you deserved it. He loaded the last of the tools into his car, said he'd be back next weekend for more, drove off down the street. I went back inside, walked through the empty house, too big now, too quiet. I thought about Derek, about the Laurelhurst house on the market, about Laura with her cars and her designer clothes and her daughter who barely knew her grandfather, about Ryan working double shifts while sitting on millions he refused to touch. Henry had wanted me to see who my children had become, and I had. I didn't like it, but I'd seen it. And I'd seen what Ryan was, what Andrew had raised him to be, what Henry had hoped someone would become. I went out to the workshop one more time, turned off the light, left the door unlocked. Ryan would be back. He always came back. I stood there in the dark garage, the smell of 40 years. The auction was over, but what it revealed would stay with me for whatever time I had left. So, that's my story. I'd love to hear what you think. Was Henry right to test his family this way? Or was he unfair to the other children? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe for more stories like mine.